right. Somehow we made it back. I'm your host, Mike Wahle. Thanks for watching Block Party, guys. It's a post-draft block party. It's the first one I've done in a while. Thanks to our parent company, the Believe Network, for sponsoring us. Bet Online. Wait, I don't believe Bet Online has maintained their sponsorship arrangement with our parent company. In fact, I've actually been away long enough that it's probably time for me to go out on my own here and find some sponsors. And the first one, if you can't see it, this is a Caffeine and Kilos t-shirt. So guys out there, Packers fans, anybody who watches this show, go buy some of their shit, either buy their coffee or their t-shirts. Tell them I sent you, and then maybe they'll throw a sponsorship our way, and everybody gets what they want. I'm your host, Mike Wahle. Thanks for watching. You can follow me on at Michael68 on Twitter, X Process to Perform on Instagram. Check out our Process to Perform channel on YouTube. And listen, I know first and foremost, I don't spend a lot of time on this pre-draft stuff. I always thought when I was playing, there was one year I remember that because you're not sure about your job and you start worried about not worrying, but you start watching the ticker. But that's only on draft day. You're not reading any of this information. And I suppose the reason is I've talked about this before. I always want to figure out how to beat somebody. So it's like until they're your opponent or your teammate, then you want to learn more about them. But I guess that has always just been the way I think about things. So when I thought, just going into this just as a brief kind of generalization, what do the Packers need coming into this draft? Now they picked up Banks, they picked up the corner, they picked up a corner and a guard. And we did find out that he's going to be guard, Jenkins is going to be center. If I'm Jenkins, I totally disagree with that. If he's going to be an all-pro there, that makes a ton of sense. Centers are making some good money. I think somebody just re-signed for like 18 mil. I can't remember who it is now, but I don't think it was Creed Humphrey. Maybe it was somebody else. But so the guys are starting to make some money that's maybe closer to at the highest level what the guards are going to be making, which is probably 20 a year. And then we just saw Penny Sewell sign for 28. So that's it's just going to get bumped up and up and up. And really, we're talking 18 or $20 million a year. Like, what the hell are we talking about, right? Like, that's a lot of money. So if Jenkins thinks he can be a better center than guard, he obviously had to have been on board with that. I think you're always in a unique position. We're over here in Frankfurt, and we've got a guy who's playing center that's our best center and our best guard. And that's what I think Jenkins is, your best center and your best guard. So, what is that? You have to figure out what's more valuable, or maybe what the scarcity of resources is. And they seem to have more guys that they like at the guard position than they do in the center. So, anyways, we'll see how that plays out. I thought that we desperately needed to address the pass rush, and then if you're going to go A, B, C, pass rush, cornerback, solid offensive lineman, and then go find that kind of wide receiver room draft gem that they always seem to find in not the first round. And lo and behold, what do we get? We get first round draft pick for the first time in as long as anybody can remember. These guys pick up Matthew Golden in the first round. Then we pick up, and Matthew Golden, fastest guy on the offensive side of the football in the draft, runs a 4.29. So not only did you pick up a guy, but you picked up a guy who's an absolute blazer. And really, there's anytime you have legitimate speed and route running capabilities, he's a different mold than Christian Watson, just in the way that he runs. The way that he gets to 4.29 is different than the way that Christian Watson gets to his top end, right? Watson's probably a little more of a strider. I think this guy's not as tall in stature. Then we got the best nickname in the league. We got Anthony Belton, and I'll talk about him in a second. We move to another wide receiver from TCU. We pick up a couple edge rushers. We pick up a defensive tackle. We pick up another offensive lineman later on. And a quarterback in there. I misspoke. We picked up a corner in there as well. But here's the thing, what a difference a year makes when we're going into the draft last year and you go, hey, what's the strongest room in the building, not named the quarterback room? And you probably say the wide receiver room's as strong and competitive as you're going to find. You got to feel really good about them. You just don't know is there going to be a number one? How's Matt LaFleur going to use them? We talked about this before. So there's too many drops, and that belies maybe an underlying problem with how they're preparing because there's just too many drops. There's like your the technique of catching a football is not automated yet for some odd reason. And then you look at Matt LaFleur; he's a master play caller, and part of that is he's putting the right chess. He's like Pep Guardiola on the soccer field. You're putting the right chess pieces on the right places on the board. The question always was last year when we weren't having maybe the level of success you were hoping for, are you pigeonholing some guys by putting them in specific spots? And I think the good thing about bringing Matthew Golden in is he's going to be given every opportunity to run every single route combination there is, which is probably, net, you just think about who's this benefit the most. Well, obviously the offense in general, but really you think about Jordan Love. So fastest guy in the draft. Now, Anthony Belton, best name in the draft, the big Escalade. 6'6", 336 pounds, 4-year starter, I think at left tackle at NC State. So I did a video on this guy, fun watch for me. Maybe a new direction for Green Bay at the quarterback position. Excuse me, the offensive line position, because he brings a combination of size and pretty good athleticism. I know a lot of people are saying you're hiding his athleticism, blah, blah, blah. Don't necessarily agree with that. I think he's a pretty good athlete. Again, 6'6", 336. I think you're a pretty good athlete for that size. That, does that limit some of the things you do? Maybe, but you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, you look at, who are the best teams in the league, and you look at that offensive line and that defensive line. Are we going back to winning in the trenches? I hope so. And then, therefore, do you have the right guys for it? I don't know. I'll answer the questions at the end with our listener questions, but I know one of them is going to be where does this guy going to project? Part of that's in the tape review. I'm going to put that tape review in right now, so please enjoy that, and then we'll come back and talk about the rest of these draft picks and get to your listener questions.
When we go through this stuff, you really just kind of looking at, all right, how do we get this guy to game ready? What position do we project him at, et cetera, et cetera. So he's a big man. You're going to see in both the tapes that I looked at, it doesn't take a lot of snaps to figure out kind of what his game's all about. The one thing he does that is consistent is he is always ending up with some sort of back foot stagger. He likes to lean into his players right now, which isn't a great thing, but he does have a good use of his hands. And I think maybe more importantly, as it pertains to the Green Bay Packers, this guy likes to finish blocks as often as possible. So this is probably the favorite play that we have on the tape here. So he connects in, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. But then we just see how this whole play finishes out. Over, driving him off the screen. Anytime you get an off the screen block, man, you gotta get fired up, because you just think about the last 3-4 years. How many off the screen blocks do you see, coming out of the Packers line? Not that they don't have a good line, blah, 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 but it's just different right now. Here's one thing we have to take a look at. So he's got not much of a stagger, and apologize, I'm using something new here. But you see not much of a stagger here. He does a pretty good job of getting out. He tries to stay flat. Moves around pretty well for a big guy. But because of his footwork, we'll just kind of see, kicks back, does a good job staying flat, has a little bit of a flat set because of that. And something we'll probably have to work on as we get further down the road. So you begin this play here, we're really thinking 1, and then this guy's going to drop. So he's going to check back inside. 2, 1, 2, and then reset with a hand here, just get the edge. Does a pretty good job, has good awareness. You like a lot of the stuff this guy does on the tape. The thing that stands out the most, honestly, is he just seems like he's an aggressive player. Now, we go back to it, and because of that stagger, there's a lot of kind of flat setting. And what do I mean by flat setting? We're just kind of going this direction, which is going to be tough against speed rushers in the National Football League, something that he can probably fix. There's always kind of a hop out, and we're just kind of letting our athleticism and our size engulf. You just look at the body profile and position right here. Hands are low, chest is up a little bit high. He's got a decent hip hinge, but there's just some things we can correct. But he's patient, and listen. The great thing about having 330 pounders is this right here. Effectively, this guy, like, we always know you're going to be okay. And you're always confident if we go back and just watch this. Like, this guy is not worried about second level rushers coming. He's just, okay, we'll be all right. And again, love the hand placement here. Love the hand placement. So we're looking right here. Just watch the initial movement. It's kind of straight up and down. Feet are together. If you're just looking at footwork here. So there's a lot of stuff we can look to improve on. The thing is that the game's not as fast, obviously, one. And then two, he is a big, we just don't have a lot of big guys. And you're going to have to play with a better base. You're going to have to play with a better hip hinge. But again, there's a little bit of just this natural body presence and control that comes with being 330 some odd pounds and being able to get around a little bit. That it's just an element of the game that Packers don't really have. And this is what you love again. At the end of this, he's always trying. He gets a hold of this guy, and he's just always trying to finish off the screen. You see this pass protection. You see the initial stance. This isn't going to play in the National Football League. You're going to have, if you stand with that little of a stagger at the tackle position against the guy who can really get upfield, you're going to have some problems. This is something that's easily fixable. He's got that flat set jump outside, and then he's pretty decent. Again, a lot of headbutting, but that's how it is in college. Not a bad job with the footwork here. Looking at it from a different angle. Love the hands. Always tries to finish. Again, doesn't seem like a big deal here, but you're getting a finish block. There's a lot on this. I just watched 2 series from 2 tapes, and you get a lot of finish blocks from this guy. And if nothing else, you're going to change that attitude. Again, trying to finish. Always trying to finish. Love it. Look at this block. Oh. I mean, road grading. What a great job. So we just call this a slip. So we have a slip. So 1, 2, up to the backer. And man, they just crush this guy. Hands inside, gets to the second level, straining to make contact, straining to keep pressure on. Really good job. And the dude is excitable, man. You gotta love it. Gotta love it. Yeah, you can clean everything up, but at the end of the day, guys, here's what we're looking at. Does the kid like to try to physically dominate people? Does he have the capacity to do so? I mean, I could sit here and I can tell you that his hands are too high or I don't like his base, but that's why we have coaching. Big body, moves decent. Base block on a little play action here. Inside second. You just don't want him to lead into it, but you see how he plays the arms extended, gives himself some time. And that there, you see he has the recovery ability, and then he sinks his hips. This is exactly what you want. So this game shows you just maybe a little something different, some other cracks in the arm, and you just start with this initial snap. And we're just talking about pad level, and then we're looking at his hands. Okay, and they're outside. Again, all this stuff can be fixed, but you don't necessarily love that because he's not going to gain his ground, especially when you get these keeper plays. We don't know if this is an RPO with a quarterback keep or it's a designed run or a designed keeper, but you want to come off and really be able to slam hands into the middle of the chest plate. You want to keep that pad level down. Again, the biggest thing is it starts with your stance, and this stance doesn't give him an opportunity to generate a lot of power right off the line of scrimmage. And so especially if you're going to, go and maybe you're going to play tackle or maybe you're going to try to fight for one of those guard positions, I'm not sure. But, if you just look at this, you're really going to have to learn how to play with lower hips if you want to play at the guard position. Obviously, 3-point stance are help. He hasn't had to do that in college. Okay. So, again, here's a guy that's winning. And here's a guy that we're not going to, you never apologize for winning, but just if we're looking at the set because of the stance, it's going to have to go out. So we have to jump. He's a big guy, and he does a good job of staying square to the line of scrimmage. Okay, so we like all of that. You see the little bit of a hop. He's got a reach. Can he chop that hand and go inside? Is there opportunities there because of it? Again, the big thing he's doing, he's covering up. He's a massive human, and he keeps his shoulder pad square to the line of scrimmage. So he does a lot of good things. Tries to play extended right here. Has a pretty decent balance as far as his ability to not get beat on that spin. A lot of good stuff there. Good looking play right here. We're going to pass this off. We're going to pass this game off. Out, back in. Easy, keeping extended. Again, giving yourself that time. And then you can't see it here, but you see his feet. He's chasing the football. Seems like a little thing. It's a big deal. Okay. And this is, again, we just talked about footwork and what is the problem here? Well, it's that stance. So your first step's here, first step's there, and then you're going to end up going backwards and kind of backpedaling. You can get away with that at the college level. You can get away with that if you're Walter Jones, but against the pro guy, he ends up in a great position. You call this a win. And if you're watching the tape, it's like you're not going to knock. Again, we care about the process a little bit more than the outcome. So we just have to look at that and go, okay, we can definitely do some work with that. Again, I think 99% of that is just how he stands. Get out of that particular stance, you'll be in a better shape. Okay, so they're going to spike this guy down, and we're going to try to either cut him off or drive him vertically. Now, to do that, you got to have great pad level, and you have to have your hands inside. So he takes the right footwork. You see that second step just kind of shuffles over, and then you're catching. You got hands outside. And again, guys, this is pretty high level stuff. So we can always look to improve this, but you'd love to be able to get that and drive it vertically this way, not let the guy cross your face. Now, defensive end doesn't make the play, and 74 gets a little of this action, love it. I can't tell. He might be actually even flatter with his stance when he's in the run game, which is kind of wild. You see that he's not punching, he's reaching with his hands. You see he's not punching, he's reaching, then he's headbutting, he's using that mass, okay? This is all just very coachable stuff, but look at just by driving the feet and finishing the block, he's going to end up on the ground, but look what the running back has as far as a lane. Love the effort. Love the effort. I think athletically, just off the top of my head, athletically at the tackle position against premier pass rushers in the league, that's a tough ask, but a jump rope and a couple years of training does wonders.
Okay, coming back. So we have Baron Sorrell, I hope I say his name right, from the University of Texas, 6'3", 256. I watched a couple series on him in college. So the first thing that kind of stands out is he plays like he's heavy-handed. He has great play strength. Good with hand placement. Really good with hand placement. Really like his moves at the top of the route. I think the top of the rush. I think he's very violent at the top of the rush. I think he does a really good job of isolating joints, working joints, and then capturing the initial edge. Does he have the speed? I think he ran a 4.68, which is, I think that's pretty good. But does he have the speed to kind of turn the corner against the elite guys? You like that he plays well of a 2 and a 3-point. I think his initial pad projection, hip level out of either of those is excellent. So I think he can play with leverage in the run game. Again, 6'3", 265 is he's not a huge guy, but he's a good sized guy. What are some of the things he have to look at? Well, is your first step good enough to challenge the initial leverage of a good pass rusher in the National Football League? And, obviously you've seen a bunch of good guys at Texas and all the competition they play. And then I think as I was watching the tape, I just thought, if the Green Bay Packers, because I know we have a new D-line coach in there, and hopefully with that comes a new rush plan. If they give him better angles of departure off of the line of scrimmage, I think he's going to find more success. So what does that mean? That means that he can line up at a tight 5, a wide 5, a 7, a 9. He's going to be upfield. He's going to be angled into the hip of the tackle. Those angles of departure determine the footwork of that tackle. Can he freeze guys? Because again, once he kind of gets that pre-confrontation spot, he's in a pretty good position more often than not. So what I'm saying is, can we teach him how to move that up a little bit, up towards the line of scrimmage so we can have a larger edge? Then they go and pick Colin Oliver, 6'2", 240. Now, this guy was hurt a couple games last year, so I had to watch a couple different games to actually find him on tape. Good young player, really good college player. Like, just, I'm not saying he's not going to be a good pro, but he's a really good college player. 6'2", 240, undersized, uses his speed, really uses his leverage when you just watch this guy versus tackles or guards. And I like the fact they moved him around a little bit, particularly, being on the move pre-snap. He really takes advantage of edges using that leverage, that bend, and some of that speed. He's very, very smooth at the top of his rush. He's got kind of I don't know if this isn't a word, but a natural, like, slipperiness to him. He can get to the edge. He can really attack arms. I liked, again, that he demonstrated he was kind of like, not Micah Parsons, but the way that they used him. Remember the way they used Micah early on, and they would, like, start him at linebacker. He'd walk up, he'd rush a guard, he'd kind of catch you off guard. Is he part of the count or not? They used them a little bit that way at Oklahoma State, and I thought it was really effective. Listen, there's always a question when your size is under 250 pounds, particularly in the run game. Can you hold up? Right? So it's like, how do you account for this guy in the run game? That's always difficult. But we see a lot of good players in the league. Hassan Reddick, Nolan Smith. Like, you see these guys that are playing really, really high-level ball that aren't necessarily huge. So there are guys that can get after it in the run game. A lot of that is leverage, pad level, and aggression. This guy has it in spades. So I like those players. And I like the draft. I mean, you always like the draft. Listen, once you get to the 6th, 7th round guys, you're taking a flyer. You don't know who that is. Some of those guys are kind of in the same aisles as the free agents. Not that they're better or worse. So they have, it's just, when you get to the 6th or 7th round, a lot of time the agent will go like, I really don't want you to get drafted now because I want you to be able to pick where you go because you probably have a better chance to make the team. But if you just look at the TCU kid and his ability, what he can do kind of after the catch, that's interesting. Certainly, Debo started this. Debo Samuel's with the Commanders now, but you just start thinking about every team needs that utility player. And Reed's been that for us. Now, is this another guy? Does he do similar things? Does he do them at a higher level? Like, you really don't know till you see it in a Packers uniform. But listen, with Golden, with addressing the offensive line, addressing that running back position, adding a weapon, you can just tell, like, okay, we're gearing up to score a lot of points. And we're gonna try to outscore teams, and we want to put that defense back in a position where they can run exactly what they want. Now, they picked up the kid the D tackle from Georgia. He was a part-time starter, I think, his last year there. I honestly haven't watched tape on him, don't know a lot. But you look at these guys, and it's always interesting when you don't get like an edge, like a real commanding pass rusher in the first couple rounds when it seems like it's pretty obvious that's what you need. And then at the corner position, Jai Alexander, isn't he with coming back? We don't know what that looks like yet. I think a lot of people have changed their mind on that since the draft. I have no idea. You have a lot of good players there, but obviously you've got two guys now that are slot players. And if they're better in the slot, that doesn't mean they can't play outside. It means that they're better in the slot. And you have those three safeties. You got to put them all on the field because they're really, really good. So with that said, let's get to the important part of this, which is our user questions. Guys, thanks for getting me on all of these. So let me just get right to them. I'm going to go down and start. I got a lot of them here. So what do you think of their O-line additions? Yeah, like, generally we'll have to see how they play out. And I think the big thing is the kid they took later on. Both those guys could move into guard, honestly. They both have decent numbers. They're not necessarily fast, but they're pretty strong. I think, as you watch, if you saw the tape, then I don't know how much we like right now the bend in Belton, in the big Escalade. I don't know how much we like the bend in him now from stance out. It's something you'll have to work on, but if you can work on that, you can certainly. I mean, listen, there's a presence I talked about on the film. There's a presence that you get at 336 pounds that you just don't get. I was playing at 295. It's just not the same, right? Do you think that Belton would end up at guard? Also, any thoughts on John Williams? I think I just hit that. Yeah, I do think. Well, listen, this is what's okay. Here's something that's really telling. So I just went to the Green Bay Packers website, okay, and Belton joined. This is off the Green Bay Packers website, this is wild to me, honestly. If they were told to do this or they weren't, I don't know. But the last statement about Belton joins an offensive line room that had 3 draft picks added last year, including first-round Jordan Morgan, who is expected to compete with Rasheed Walker at left tackle this season. If I'm Rasheed Walker, I'm going like, what do I got to do? Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. And you're always going to bring in a guy to try to replace him, but for them to put that, I mean, that's basically saying, because it's on the GreenBayPackers.com website or whatever, Packers.com website, we're going to try to put this kid in for you, right now. That's not something that usually goes in somebody else's bio, which is just absolutely wild. So, yeah, we always talk about it. First-round draft picks get a lot of chances, man, and nothing he doesn't deserve one. But that didn't feel right at all. That did not feel right at all. So, with that said, I think he could probably end up a guard. He plays out of a 2-point. He needs to be able to play out of a 3. He'd have to play a lot lower. You saw the footwork stuff we talked about in there, but really it would come down to, like, can you pad level fire off the ball? Can you be a little bit better with your hands? Which current Packers lineman would you call maulers? Ooh, I think let's address that first. I don't think any, if I'm being honest. I think that the boy, that's a good question, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful at all. But part of being maulers isn't about being a tough guy. I didn't realize this. Somebody else, one of my guys, actually told me this. I was like, hey, we need to get you kind of get paid to be a good pass rush or pass pro guy, but you kind of get famous for being a good run blocking guy. And he was like, what makes you a good run blocking guy, right? I go, finishing. He goes, yeah, but I can finish. I go, ah. He goes, well, you're in good shape. He goes, if you're in good shape, you never get tired. You can finish the block longer. If you're tired all the time, then you can't finish. And I guess that makes sense. So maybe the question is, who's in the best shape? I always felt like Sean Ryan was a guy that wanted to finish. He just had to work on his technique. He just kind of feel like he walks around with that kind of demeanor. You just, you don't see it as much, though. I don't even know if you don't. If we used to have a rug in front of a War Daddy rug in front of War Dogs or something in front of our locker, if we had the most knockdowns for the week or the year or something, I don't know if anybody even cares anymore. I don't know. The game has changed a lot. So, but as far as maulers, there's not a Penei Sewell on our team, obviously, but I mean, those guys are like Jenkins is certainly capable of being that guy. I think Zach Tom would like to be that guy with the addition of the right guard, and that puts him in a position to kind of get those, especially on those double blocks, to really get them downfield, like we see on some of those really good teams. So, yeah. Let's see here. A legit chance for Escalade to play tackle, or must we move inside? I like the pick, by the way. We need a mauler. Yep. So if this guy's anything, he's a dude that's trying to get it done. He went to some military school before this, before he went to NC State. Like, this dude I know the type. He is trying to be a good player. He is trying to be a physical player. He really enjoys playing football, and I think we're going to really like it, right? I think there's a lot of stuff he needs to work on, but he really enjoys the finishing part, the physicality of the game. He takes a lot of pride in it. You can tell by the way he talks. You can tell by the way he plays. I'm excited about that. I think they need that. The second part of this question is also, do you think the Packers are transitioning to a heavier line to be run first? No, I don't. I don't think that at all, because they just picked up a first-round wide receiver for the first time in 25 years. But you do have Josh Jacobs. You do want a better. I think what they're looking at is here's what I would look at. Given the scheme that we run, what is the benefit of having somebody 295 pounds playing if I can have a 336-pound guy there? I move better. Mike Flanagan moves better than Josh Myers. A bad example. Mike Flanagan moves better than any center that was 330. But in this offense, does that help? Does his movement skill, or does my ability to pull, does that help as much as just having a 335-pound guy at either position? And you kind of look at it that way now, right? Are they doing things how's their screen game? Do they get out the outside a lot? Do they like to run toss sweeps or crack tosses? Do they like to pull their guards? Do they like to pull their centers? are the second level angles difficult? Do they always have an answer for like with an RPO, or does the center actually have to track down a play side linebacker? Like those things, they've kind of like LaFleur's an unbelievable play caller. Like he can kind of erase some of those problems where they used to just be like, yeah, we'll just let Flanagan take care of it. Like he can run. So, or Marco, or any of the guys, right? Because we weren't as big a line, so I think you can deal with that a little bit differently. You think about like the old Broncos line where Terrell Davis had multiple 2,000-yard, seasons where they have one dude that was 300 pounds. It's just a different game now. So, a lot of questions here about Belton. Does he project inside at right or left guard? Probably left guard. What do you see? Okay, personnel adjustments on the O line this offseason change what overall offense can do in turn. Yeah, I think so. Does it change what the offense can do? I mean, I think you're better. Net, you're better. Like you got rid of Myers, you brought in Banks. Banks is better than Myers. We've talked about this before. Net, you're better. Jenkins is better. Okay, so Banks isn't probably as good as Jenkins, but we just talked about this. Like, how big a difference is it? Versus like Jenkins is a lot better than Myers. So net, you're better, right? Now you bring in another guy. Jordan Morgan's going to be healthy, and again, like Jordan Morgan probably. If he watches, he feels like he probably get a lot of shit from me. He doesn't get any. I love that he's a weight room guy. He's a team guy. Everybody that I know at Arizona loved him. It's just you're always in this weird spot where you see guys playing well, and like this guy's going to get a shot because of where he got drafted, and it's not his fault where he got drafted. So all of that, right? So he could be a great player for this team, and he could, things could happen in the future that you really love to see him be an All-Pro. They just brought him a second-round pick, so you have expectations that this guy's going to contribute in some form or fashion, whether it's on field goal, as a backup guy in the rotation, or as a starter. There's just, now you look at it like, okay, we got maybe 7 dudes that can start on this team in the next 2 years. Like, where do they fit? But does it change what you do? I mean, you're kind of double teams, zones. You can put Zach Tom on a crack toss. You can do some fold blocking inside. You're kind of in the same spot. I think you're like a zone football team with a lot of play action. It's still a really offensive line friendly deal. Are the Packers changing the type of lineman they draft for this pick out of their normal thresholds? Absolutely. Like, this guy is a different sized human. You'll see that when you see him on film, 6'6", 336. Like, he looks different than everybody else. And he's not like, he's a big dude, but I wouldn't say, not that the other guys are, but he's not sloppy, right? He's a pretty decent looking 336 pounds. Long-term center projection doesn't look great. That is not a question, but maybe. I thought for sure they draft a high one this year. I don't know, because they just brought Jenkins in, and I think they got Monk last year. I think Sean Ryan can play center. Let's see. Yeah, that's your question. Do they have another long-term center? I think either one of those guys could, and quite frankly, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm still surprised they're not putting Aaron Banks at right guard. And giving Monk a shot, or Sean Ryan a shot at center. But you can see where Matt maybe prioritizes the play calling aspect of it, or the identification aspect of it at center position. But I think that right guard position is open right now. I think that's an open tryout. Who's your favorite pick after round 1? I actually really like the kid from Texas. Yeah, but the Escalade, just from name recognition alone, unbelievable. Why the hell does Goody and whoever else think that Rasheed Walker isn't a good enough left tackle at this point? I tell you what, that is a great question, Sam. That is a great question. Same sentiment. And if they're planning for the future, I think that's fantastic too. I don't know that this guy's a future tackle. You saw it on the tape. Maybe he is. Coaching goes a long way. But it's why it says here lesser left tackle's got $20 million a year in the offseason. So if he's a free agent, he's kind of where his starting point. I don't know if I agree with that. But yeah, let's say he's worth around $20 million, and they're like, nah, we'll just pay a guy $5 million, because we have these young draft picks. That makes sense. You once said at some point the height and size doesn't allow you to bend low enough. Of course, I'm paraphrasing what you said. Do you see that with Escalade? No, he's 6'6". I was talking about Mekhi Becton, who's like, I think it's whatever time I said that. I don't know how tall he was. He was 400 pounds. So, I do think at like 6'8"-ish, it's like Jonathan Ogden was a Hall of Famer, but no one's accusing Jonathan Ogden being the lowest man on the field, right? I do think at some point it becomes difficult, and obviously that depends on who you're playing against and their body types and whatnot, and how much passing you do. But a lot of these guys, if they just practice out of a 3-point, they'll actually play out of a 2-point a lot lower. It's just for whatever reason, coaches don't make them do it. Thoughts on the D line? Hopefully, improved pass rush in the draft. Another year of development for LVN and Gary. But can we stop a run against the big guns with our current interior? Had a surprisingly solid year against the run last year. Just curious if it's repeatable. Great question. Getting rid of Slayton didn't help. I didn't think. I thought it was a big loss. They didn't pick anybody up really in free agency of note. I know they drafted the D tackle out of Georgia. He was a part-time starter. It is Georgia, so fair enough. But not necessarily a headline grabber. I was surprised they didn't address these positions. Certainly I thought it was going to be higher in the draft. Enik Bari is always interesting from a pass rush standpoint. And then you kind of look at Collins and you go, okay, 6'2", 240, like slippery, plays with good leverage. Maybe he's a 2.0 of that a little bit. He is a little bit undersized. The Texas kid plays big time ball every week against big time players. And so he's going to have some stuff to him. But there's nobody on the tape at least that you're like, that's a game plan guy. And I always just go back to like, I would love to have a game plan. If I was a head coach or a GM, I would have at least one game plan guy on the defensive line. And I think they when they paid Gary, I think that they thought that's what he was going to be, and that's what he might be this year. But that's not what he was last year in this new defense. So we'll see. How much of a badass could Anthony Belton be moved to right guard? I think that was framed poorly, but I think that would be awesome. I think that's a legitimate chance if he gets into the 3-point. Are you excited for the Packers to finally be bringing in some smaller, quicker Ds? No, I think so. No, I think there was the Colts indoors on the old turf, right? With those two were the only pair of like small guys where you're like, holy hell, man! Like nobody, and the best spin move in the history of the game. Those guys were special. But I just generally speaking, if you're not worried at all about getting long armed, then the game really isn't that difficult as compared to what you can do to those guys in the run game. And I don't think for me, just telling you 265 or whatever the Texas kid, I don't think he doesn't look that small, right? But I like 275 a lot better. Is there an area on this team that not improved from last year? Oh, that's an interesting question. Well, running back, I don't think we added anybody, although the TCU kid, I guess, could get back there every once in a while. Picked up a slot corner or maybe a starting right corner. Picked up another offensive lineman, improved there. You can just say the quarterback room will mature. Wide receiver just improved. Yeah, you got to feel good about it, right? I mean, they picked up Isaiah Simmons, who, like, listen, I don't know if anybody remembers when he came out, but man, what an athlete. And I know, like, not everybody's going to have the greatest career. A lot of it depends on where you're at. If he was like, I think for a while, at least he was in Arizona. That place is kind of where, players go to die a little bit. So does he play over, I don't know how that looks, but that guy's a really good, athlete that can contribute on special teams, can maybe contribute in some packages on defense like they did last year. Yeah, man, I think this is a better football team. It'd be hard to say that it's not a better football team. Like, who did they lose that you're like, God damn it, I can't believe we lost that guy? I just don't see them being a person. Coming from the perspective as a fan and ex-player, which GM franchise roster build do you prefer, Thompson or Gute? Well, let's see. Thompson said that he didn't give a shit about guards in free agency, so I'd have to agree with him. And no, I don't know. I think both of them. Look, I think the way that the Packers do business. Listen, you guys don't remember this, but Jamal Reynolds was the 10th pick in the draft for, I think, Sherm. And that was, probably the all-time worst first-round pick. Ahmad Carroll, Edwards in 1999, and Antoine Edwards. I mean, so there's been some first-rounders where you're like, holy shnikes, right? Like, didn't pan out. And so I think if you looked at Goody, you said maybe some of these guys are not what you wanted them to be at that level. But, there's the draft and develop. I just don't think you can draft and develop your way to a Super Bowl. I think a lot of things would have to work in your favor. I know that people can do it, but it seems you got to get the quarterback at the contract right, and blah blah blah. I think bringing in guys the last 2 years like Goody has done and spending money on them, like I just think that's the way the world works now in the National Football League, maybe more so than when Ted was here. What's our best OL combination? I'm gonna stay until somebody proves me wrong. I'm gonna say Rasheed Walker. I guess Banks Jenkins are gonna be left guard center, although I would argue that. Um, Zach Tom is obviously he's probably our best guy at tackle, and then guard position. I think that's where it's going to get interesting. Is it Sean Ryan? Is it Jordan Morgan? Is it Escalade? Is there somebody else that we're not thinking about? Both those young guys who granted struggled a little bit in that playoff game. They showed enough. They showed me enough movement wise where they can play, at least get a chance to compete. So yeah, that right guard position could be up for grabs. I would be super interested to see this Escalade kid put his hand in the ground, just see what it looks like, right? And then just learn how to punch a little bit because you can't teach 336 pounds, guys. Tom is great at right. I didn't finish the question. Yeah, I don't know. There's no right tackle, left tackle thing. Like all the good. Like here's what happened. Like Michael Strahan started beating Runyon so bad that all the guys moved over to the left side. So a lot of the best pass rushers are on the left defensive end playing the right tackle. So right tackle is just as important as left now, in my opinion. Yep. I think I know part of this one. Many college teams put their best OL at left tackle just because they played in college. Doesn't mean that's where they play in the NFL. What's the best advice you have for recently drafted Packers? What should they do between now and camp to make the transition better? Learn your playbook. Okay, this is a great question. Learn your playbook as much as you can. Okay, um, get yourself physically as durable as you can, and then get in this mindset of like, I might not win every time, but I'm gonna physically win every time. If you know what I mean. Like if it comes down to it, and I got to fight or I got to scrap, like I can do that, right? Probably talking about the trench guys, the box guys, but learning your playbook. Like if you have confidence that like you know what to do and you can figure out all the rest of the stuff, like be read and react. That's how guys go. And if guys can do that, I think we'll be in good shape. Great question. Is it easier or harder to project success in the pros for college OTs than it may be 10, 15 years ago? I think it'd be easier pro offenses, more college. Yeah, I think it's way easier now. I think the offenses are easier. They're not as complicated. There's so many options for the quarterback to get rid of the football. They're really, I mean, we played a really friendly offense. Like Packers offense back in the day with Brett was friendly, man. I mean, I'm not going to complain about it. I went to the Panthers. We were in like 5-man slide half the time. Like it's friendly, right? I'm not going to complain about that. But I think, everybody says the same thing. Like these guys aren't as developed. Why? Well, there's all these reasons why. Well, then, okay, like, well, how are we doing all, it's hard to measure success in eras because it's like, I mean, it's literally a different game. Like there used to be what was that play? Like you got, it wasn't you got Moss. It's like you got lit up or something. Like there was a whole highlight thing on NFL Live about how you got stuck and like the 1994, like, like Madden walkout thing was like a bunch of dudes getting, there would all be excessive foul penalties now. Like the game's totally different. Like just being able to like get into a game and understand the physical violence and not even like surviving it, but thriving in it versus now is just, it doesn't mean that they're not better athletes and they don't have better nutrition and they don't have better training technique. Like that's not what anybody's saying. Like old heads aren't ever saying that. It's like, knowing full well that anybody can hit me in the side or the back of the head at any time and they're not going to like get fined and get kicked out of the game. In fact, they're going to just get high five and I'm going to look like a fool. Like there's a different level of commitment to that. Right. And so, that's, you had to deal with that and get better, and all the other stuff. So, the severity of it, I think was a little different than it is now. So yeah, I don't know that it's easier to project. I just think it's easier generally I think in some ways it's easier to play now. His nickname is Supper Club. That's fantastic. What is the contract situation with Watson? If the Packers held him out for the season due to his ACL, I have no idea. That's a great year. If they choose it, does it count towards his years? I think the answer is yes. If he's on the team. Belton pick, you getting bigger. It says somebody said justice or somebody implied the middle pressure seems to bother Love more than usual last year. I don't know about that. Like, listen, like here's a newsflash, guys. When people are running at your face as a quarterback, you don't do as well, no matter who it is. If it happens more than it should, you're not going to look as good when it happens. Like those things are all is what it is stuff, you know. But I the copycat league. The Packers have always looked at kind of athlete. I don't think these guys run sub fives. I know they don't. But you know, they're not like 5'6", 5'7" guys. I don't think. Talking about the two offensive linemen, strong. You know, the big man moves pretty well for a big man. You know, you're not looking at the tape and going like, well, that's a clodhopper. Like I know there's some athleticism comments out there. Like I see a bad stance, which leads to kind of poor initial footwork. I see some hands that could improve. I see a natural bend that's there but could be improved on. Like, so I don't see anything that's deterring me from thinking he's going to be he's going to get accomplish everything he wants to get accomplished. I just think that there's sometimes with some of this stuff, it's like what we just talked about, development at college and the style of the offense that they're running and the hours they have to not work with their coaching staff anymore. Like all that stuff matters, man. Like you don't have any idea how self-motivating you have to be to teach yourself how to tackle or block somebody by yourself because your coaches can't be around you but 10 hours a week or whatever it is. Like that shit's hard, man. It's really like it's like what are you unconscious incompetence? You don't know what you don't know. It's like who's teaching you? Learn karate from a book like Daniel saw, man. So tough out in the streets, guys. All right. Listen, thanks for watching. I'll be back here sooner than later. Probably not till sometime around training camp, though. If you guys got any more questions, if you get enough questions in, if something magical happens here, I'll probably do another one of these. But until then, thanks for watching. I really appreciate all of you. Find me Mike Wahle 60 on Twitter, Prostitute Perform, and Instagram. Talk to you next time.